All right, I think it's a great time to go ahead and kick it off. So let's go ahead and do that. Happy Wednesday, everybody. My name's Aaron Conant. I'm the co-founder, managing director here at BWG Connect. We are a giant networking knowledge sharing group. Thousands of brands. They kicked it off 7 years ago. I was on the brand side, just struggling to find other people to talk to and the right people to connect with. And so why not build a great big networking group of brands? I try to talk to 20 to 30 a week to stay on top of newest trends, strategies, pain points. And it's from those conversations that we get the topics for the webinars we do and the topics for the dinner. So kind of for scale, we're going to do 250 or so webinars this year. We'll do close to 100 dinners, if not just a little over. If you're not on the loop and you want to be, just ping myself, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com, or Tim, or anybody else from the team, and we'll make sure we get you looped in. A couple housekeeping items. We start in 3 to 4 minutes after the hour. We always do that to give people time to jump in after the last meeting. We're going to wrap up before the end of the hour here. I know we have 60 minutes on the calendar, but we're gonna be done well in advance of that, just in case you're looking at your watch. The other thing is we always like these to be as educational and informational as possible. So at any point in time, if you have questions, drop them into the chat, drop them into the Q&A, or email me directly, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com, and we'll get those questions answered as real time as we can. So with that, I think, as we kind of jump into it, the title today, How to Make Organic Search Work Harder in the Era of Paid Retail Media. I think if you were there as part of the beginning where Jonathan and I were chatting just a little bit around this pendulum that swings back and forth in organic search. And I don't think it's ever really gone away, just the attention on it. And the importance of it has not ever gone away, just the attention that people are giving to it. And so great friends, partners, supporters of the network for a long time now, been friends with the founders over there for a while, and just thought, hey, it'd be great if they could jump on and help educate the community as a whole. So Jonathan, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do a brief intro on yourself and Analytic Index, who you are and how you guys play in the space, that'd be awesome. And then we'll just jump into the content. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah. And I did this strategically, Aaron. I wanted to make sure that I introduced Analytic Index before I introduced myself, because Analytic Index is the real star of the show. We are the digital retail search, share, and shelf metrics platform. We look across a number of retailers, but our methodology is identical across all of them so that we can pull in paid and organic detail at a very, very granular and daily level. That makes life really, really easy for brands and agencies alike. Everybody loves us because once you get locked into a retailer, we give you the whole retailer. It's not a few words here, a few products there, a few brands here. It is the entire landscape in categories, brands, keywords, and products. I'm not going to speak too much to the numbers that you see here, but we're always expanding their offering, expanding the customized scorecards and reports that we do, basically to drive innovation and insight into how search is driving people's e-commerce business at the big retailers across the landscape. I joined Analytic Index in November of 2023 after several years, both on the brand side and then later in the metrics measurement consulting side at Edge by Essential. A number of years at Mattel and Stanley Black & Decker in a variety of e-commerce and marketing roles. But really my superpower is creativity and being able to take the data, take all the insights that you can pull in from any data set and try to turn it into something useful to my clients. And that's what we do at Analytic Index. Is we're trying to be creative in a very analytical space. And so that kind of dovetails immediately into today's conversation around organic search. The agenda today, and it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to look at what we're seeing in the media around paid search and trying to figure out, hey, what does this mean for organic placement and organic optimization? Once we get through that, we're then going to look at some of the top tactics and strategies in the marketplace. What are the best brands? What are the best companies doing in their quest to optimize for organic search? And then the last thing we're going to look at is that continuation, enduring to the end of keyword review and alignment, because it's something that I'll speak to a lot. search is just a reflection of shopper psychology. Shoppers are trying to find solutions to problems, answers to their questions. And shoppers that have a shopping agenda are on Amazon, Walmart, Target, and a few of these other retailers. They have the intent to buy. And so solving that need is really helping them find the product that they want. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we can adapt to these continuing shopper trends in search. So, and I'll kick this off by saying earlier this week, I was at the Ad Exchanger conference in Las Vegas. I have never been bombarded with so many acronyms in my life in the span of just a few hours. I am not an advertisement expert, but to hear how locked in these teams were on retail media and on commerce media, and how this was such a huge growing space. And they all were referencing a lot of the same materials from a variety of sources. But the long and short is that retail media is the focus of really everyone in the advertising space, because they're seeing such a high growth opportunity there. There's Google cookie deprecation on the horizon. There is all these retailers understanding and starting to kind of fill in and realize their potential as advertisers on their own platforms. They're all kind of moving into this space seemingly at the same time. And on the outside, this kind of looks like it's the end of organic search, right? The ad placements are going to take over the page. And to some degree, that's true. From 2021 to 2023.
Really quick though, why
Yeah.
do you think that's happening? Do you think it's just because the attribution is just right there and it's near immediate? And like brands like that, right? They like to see the direct attribution. And I mean, obviously retailers like the additional dollars, right? It's kind of this shift from what used to be a retail media budget, end caps, displays, all this extra money that poured in.
Mhm.
They're grabbing on the digital side. Like, why is it just taking over right now?
Well, I think one of the reasons, and I'm no expert in this ad space, but I think one of the reasons is that up until pre-COVID, the retailers weren't terribly sophisticated. They weren't terribly interested in trying to understand the e-commerce channel. COVID really sped everything up. Amazon was already in the space. They were already making a lot of money in their advertising channels. But and of course, people were watching this, but they were also saying, well, that's not really us. That's not what we do. That's not part of our core. Uh, but at the same time, these are the same retailers that, as you put it, we're putting in all kinds of activation in store to drive margin, to drive revenue. And so once they started to realize, hey, maybe we can get into this too, I think there was that big push during the COVID period when everybody was at home looking to get digital orders fulfilled. I think the second thing is that the more traditional advertisers and the digital advertisers particularly, they are looking at this apocalyptic Google cookie deprecation and saying, where can we put our dollars? If we can't personalize at that individual level with the use of cookies, what are some of the other avenues that we can use to kind of reach these same audiences, or to reach the audience in a different way? And I think the Retail Media Network, which was one of those acronyms, the RMNs, as they put it, represent a huge opportunity. And the third thing is you have all of these numbers indicating massive growth there. So when everybody sees this massive growth, they want to get in on it. You might say, well, that could also be a bubble. Maybe it would be, but we're still kind of, I would say, months, maybe even years before the bubble bursts. And that's probably why you have so much interest in it right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. And so quick question. I'm not familiar with Google's cookie update. Can you expand that a little? Yeah, so the third-party cookie, Google's been saying for years now that they're going to get rid of it. They're going to deprecate it. It's going to be gone.
Yeah.
And they just booted it again. It was supposed to wrap up this year, and they just pushed that out to 2025. And so that's kind of the that's the Google cookie update. The interesting thing is, if you're on an iOS device, that cookie only lasts 7 days anyways. And so it's almost gone. First party, 20 years, third party, 7 days, it's gone. So that'll be interesting. And another question, will the deck, are we able to share the deck at the end of the webinar?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Absolutely.
All righty,
Yeah,
cool. A quick reminder for those who've joined, you have questions, drop in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll get to them as we go. So Jonathan, didn't mean to interrupt you, but thanks for a little sidebar on retail media networks.
No problem. And it's not something I'm terribly familiar with either, but there is something to be said that when you keep getting threatened with something, Google's been threatening this cookie depredation. I can't even say it
Deprecation,
anymore.
yeah.
Deprecation. Thank you. They've been threatening this for a while now. At some point, your audience is going to get tired of that and start thinking, you know what, if they're going to keep threatening this, I'm going to just look for other opportunities. And I think maybe, because I know Google has delayed it, but it's still out there, and people are already making plans for that. They want to plan for these eventualities and be ready for it when it comes. Anyway, so then moving into this idea, what does this have in terms of search? If paid search is the new answer, is the new pink, so to speak, where does that put organic search? So we've been tracking both paid and organic search across a number of retailers since mid 2020. We saw from the way that we look at organic search visibility, which is our kind of proxy for impressions, we saw that organic search visibility declined from 83% in 2021 to 68%. So that's a drop over a 2-year period of 15%, with those gains going directly to paid search. But it's probably starting to plateau, because between Q1 of 2023 and this year, Q1 of this year, there is only a 1% shift downward in organic search visibility. So in other words, it's starting to level out. And we see this 2-to-1 ratio probably going to follow suit in the other retailers in the e-commerce space. And I believe, I can't confirm this, but it's just that shopper experience. At some point, as a shopper, as a consumer, you do not want to see your page inundated with advertisements when you're looking for one particular thing. We talked at the top of the hour about somebody who was reading an article where there was an article, or there was an advertisement between every paragraph in the article, which made for a horrible experience. And the same thing will happen to the search results page. If, again, I'm going to shout out to Lego, if you are looking for Lego blocks and you are seeing advertisements for other products in every other spot on the page, that makes for a terrible shopper experience. And ultimately, shoppers will turn off and shop somewhere else. And so that 2-to-1 ratio may very well be something that we could call a rule, that this organic to paid ratio of 2-to-1. And now we obviously need more time to test it out, but if we're working with that assumption, that means that at some point, paid search is going to plateau and hit a wall. And organic search is really going to be the way that you can differentiate yourself when all budgets, when all budgets are running equal and all budgets are focused on the same key retail events. There are some brands that recognize this and recognize how important it is to win organically. Winning in paid is always really nice. I used to work at a do-it center, and we'd always pitch the Miracle Grow. Hey, if you want to grow something really, really quickly, use Miracle Grow. But if you want to work something, a little bit longer term, if you want to create a longer term improvement in your lawn, there were other methods and other ways to get there. And I think paid search is the Miracle Grow. If you want to get that #1 spot on one day out of the year, you're going to pay for it, you're going to get it. But for the rest of the year, and in conjunction with the competition, you've got to find a way to always be relevant on those search results pages and always have, maybe not in the #1 spot, because that might always be up for grabs, but you've got to be in those top 3, top 5, top 10 spots, especially when people are looking for you and looking for your brand. And so we've identified a few brands here: Skechers, Hanes, Stanley, among others, that really rank high in organic impressions. And those impressions are being earned. In other words, they're organic and not being bought. And so the question you can ask yourself is, where do your brands land in that organic paid blend? Are you in that 80-20, 90-10, or is it 50-50 because you're fighting for brand relevance? So these are questions that the audience can ask themselves as we move on through this deck, and maybe ask themselves, what are the ways that I can do to, what are the things that I can do to improve my organic placement if paid search isn't the answer, if paid search isn't going to get me to where I need to go to hit my quotas and to reach my targets. I'll stop. Are there any questions, Aaron, in the
Yeah.
queue?
Well, there are, yeah, but so specifically, what is this chart showing, and then how do brands interact with it?
This chart is, it's just an informative chart. We're looking at really those top 20 brands in terms of organic impression versus total impression. So these are well-known brands, and when you guys have the deck in your hands, it'll be easier to read. It's a bit of an eye chart right now. But to look at these brands and to say, how are they doing it? You know, what is Stanley doing, for example, that makes them so great in organic placement? How are they aligning their keywords to the keywords that are driving their categories? How do they differ in their content optimization versus some of their competitors? And if you have the tools to look at that and to answer those questions, then you can start making decisions about your own brands. How do I align to my categories? How do I align to the keywords that are driving my categories? Which products of mine are optimized? Which ones might need some improvement based on how they compare to the competition?
And then are they able to like reach out to you with their brand and say, hey, how do I compare? And is this like a percentage that you run for brands today then? Well, they can see like, look, I'm at 33. I'm right behind Amazon Basics. It's pretty good.
Yeah, great question. Yes, because the analytic index, I mean, we go way deeper than just this chart. We dive into, we can do brand snapshots, category snapshots. We do this as part of our demo call. It's a free offering where we'll dive into somebody's brand to show them what are the categories you're selling in, what are the keywords you're winning on organically, what is your allocation of paid sponsorship in your own brand, and what are the competitive brands that you overlap with, and then diving into all of their data. So there's a lot we can do with just that introductory call, but of
Okay.
course with the subscription to Analytic Index you get a lot more. So yeah, that is something that people can reach out to me directly. I'll walk people through the platform. We'll demo looking at a brand that they care about, even a brand that, you know, we had a event a couple weeks ago. Find me an obscure brand, and I still think we'll be able to find it on our platform. You know, there's an open challenge to try to stump us and see if we're not tracking a particular brand in our search or in our share tracking.
I see Katie drops in here. What's the secret to getting above 50% point of organic impressions?
Ooh, that is a great
Yeah.
question. The secret, that's what the rest of the deck will probably
Okay.
answer. But yeah, it's a combination of things. And we're going to kind of walk through those a little bit in these next slides. So yeah, great key up there.
And are
We
you
are going to
able to
dive
do
deeper.
like competitive research? Because Chris drops in here, we use Uber Suggest for competitive research. Is that, what others are using as well?
Yeah, well, the way that we track our data is that we're looking across all of Amazon, for across hundreds of thousands of keywords and the search results pages that they produce. And so because we're able to align products to categories and brands, organically we're creating competitive data sets for these brand audits. And so we dive in to a particular category. If we're going to look at, we'll say dollhouses. If we're looking at dollhouses, we're going to see Barbie, but we're also going to see all of Barbie's competitors. We're going to see all the products that are driving that category. We're going to see the keywords that are driving each of those products. And so we get really down into the granularity because we're pulling this data on a daily basis across all those hundreds of thousands of search terms, across all the browsers at Amazon and the categories at other retailers too, to build that comprehensive view of not only your brand, but your competitors' brands. If you wanted a brand audit of yourself or your own brand, you can get that same report for a competitor. We don't put any firewalls up between your brands and your competitors' brands.
That's awesome. So, I
Yeah,
mean, because that's what a lot of, I just go back to, putting my brand hat on. Back in the days, my executive team always wanted to know how I was doing versus the competition. That's what they wanted to know, right? Is why isn't it growing faster? I've got 9 #1 bestsellers. I don't know how I could do better in the category. And they would say, well, how's the competition going? And all I could do is rate myself versus them based on a seller ranking. I mean, it was good, but in this case, if you can have hard data that says, hey, this is where we're winning or this is where we're losing, now I can start to make better decisions as a brand. Awesome.
yeah,
Love it.
exactly right. And it's at the product level where you can make decisions around which keywords you can align to, because you're not going to align to all of them, right? A lot of the keywords might be brand specific to your competitors, and those might be conquesting opportunities. But as for optimization, you are going to have plenty of material. And so yeah, we'll dive right into this. The Like you mentioned, Aaron, looking at the landscape, that's what you want to see. You don't want to just know, maybe in some instances you just want to watch one competitor or two competitor. When I was at Stanley Black & Decker, we were watching all of our top competitors to see what moves they were making and to see and to determine how we could respond to those moves. So with Analytic Index, you're getting that comprehensive category view without any firewalls, without any limitations on which brands you want to track. A lot of agencies, a lot of data providers, sometimes you have to give them the list of brands that you want to look at. You want to give them a list of keywords you want to track to see about relevance. With Analytic Index, you are getting the entire panoramic view of everything that's happening in your category, or if you want to go a different way, with everything that's happening with your top competitors. And you can really dive in deep and see things that maybe you never would have thought of or never would have suggested as an opportunity, but now is proving itself because it's showing up in the data and kind of maybe winning share. And so we're looking at things like keyword share of voice, item level share of sales, brand level share of sales across an entire category. Looking for those leaders and kind of speaking to that chart I saw that we looked at earlier, to see who the top performers are in a category is to see who is doing best. And whoever is winning on those organic search terms, you're going to see the search terms they're winning on. And that's going to give you that upper hand in how to optimize your own content. And that's what it means, is you're going to be able to make fewer mistakes and improve performance for the days, for the events, for the seasons when it matters most.
What is the sponsorship activity?
So Analytic Index is a true index. One of the things we do is we're actually looking for instances of paid sponsorship. Because we're looking across so many keywords, we're able to aggregate all that data into an index for how a brand, how a category allocates the types of paid sponsorship. So in some instances, you might see a brand that's heavily involved with brand video because they want to get the word out about their brand. Maybe they're a new challenger brand. In other instances, you'll see heavy focus on sponsored products or on header, brand features on the product page. And so we're able to allocate that out, and you can kind of see the index and see how your brand compares to not only the competition, but the whole category. And then you can make a decision. Do I want to zig when everybody else zags, or do I want to align myself with one or more of these competitors? And so that's what that means, is that you're actually building out a true index to compare yourself to everybody else in the marketplace.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just a reminder for others who have joined, you have questions, drop them in the chat or the Q&A and we'll get them answered.
So the next thing is, what are the metrics that matter? What is it that's going to be driving organic search? Well, if you think about the product detail page, the way that the Amazon bots look at it is that they go from the top left and then they go kind of down to the right, so diagonally downward. Everything starts with the title, and then you just kind of work your way down. And so finding the metrics that matter on your page, looking for a report card that's going to grade you on each of those metrics. That's what Analytic Index does. We're able to track products at that product number level so that you can see, how am I being graded? How are my titles looking compared to the keywords driving a category? How are my bullet points, my product descriptions, availability? Who's got the buy box? Those are the questions that this answers to try to optimize at the product level. And
so this is ASIN by ASIN. You're able to basically run a mini scorecard.
Yep, it's a daily pull. You're just looking, and this is not, I know that there are other providers out there. What we do, what is different with us, is that we're able to pull in some additional information. So things like pricing, ratings, and reviews. We're also able to pull in who the third-party seller is for that product. It's not just Amazon for us. We can do this for Amazon, Kroger, and Walmart. And I think Target is even on the horizon as well. So we're able to pull in all of those different data points to give you a grade. How optimized is your page? at the aggregate level, but we also do the grade at the product level too. And so at the top, you've got that little sort of speedometer across those different key metrics. But then you can also drill down into the table and get down to that item level detail for products.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're just I recently did a podcast around on the Walmart side of things, and the irony that people will take, they'll put time, effort, ad nauseum into an Amazon detail page and the content and the imagery that's on there, and then they'll overlap that directly onto Walmart, and it won't perform. It's not optimized for Walmart. And so if you're able to do this exact same thing on the Walmart side and go platform by platform, I
Yeah.
mean, you're going to have an unfair advantage. That's the reality.
Yeah, and the added bonus is that because we're not putting a limit on the keywords, this is not a brand team making recommendations to, to Salsify or some other agency about what words they want to see. Because you have access to that full keyword set, you know which keywords are driving your categories. You don't have to guess, or you don't have to assume certain things. And so those are the keywords that we align to when we say, hey, you're actually not optimized for this category because these are the 500 or 200 keywords that are driving the category, that are driving the bestsellers share of voice. And it's those keywords that matter more than the keywords that might be coming from a brand team. So it's instead of the tail wagging the dog, now it's actually the keywords that are driving, because that again is a reflection of shopper psychology. How are shoppers finding products in your categories? Those are the keywords that you want to be aligning to, and that's what we track.
Which is the extension of the algorithm as a whole and what it's looking for. Interesting.
Yeah.
So how are people then using this today? I can see like 10 different ways here that I'm using this data to either flag people on my team of things that need to be updated, and or I'm looping directly into my advertising as well. If all these are red, like, are people using this to inform their advertising strategy as well?
It can work both ways. The way that I think about the different metrics that affect e-commerce performance, your advertising is typically, it's very, very important, but it's also the last conversation you have. Your first conversation is about availability, which this tracks. Is my product in stock? Do I have the buy box? The second conversation is about, is my pricing, maybe pricing is a little bit further down, but is my content right? And so it can feed optimization, and it can also feed your marketing efforts. But I would always put optimization first, because those are the basics, the building blocks of a good product detail page. Because if you spend $1 million in paid search to bring people to a bad product detail page, or one that doesn't align to their expectations of what you're selling, you're going to get a lot of people leaving your product detail page without making a sale. And so you want to make sure that the basics are in. Your product's got to be in stock. It's got to be optimized and speaking the right message, to the right audience. And then, of course, then it's bringing more people to that product detail page to make sure that they're converting and buying the product.
Yeah, a quick question comes in. How are the scores being calculated, and what is your performance compared to develop the score?
The scores are calculated by looking at which words, and this is particular to title and to the content, which keywords are driving the category and which keywords are showing up or are present in the title and content. So the more keywords that you have that are present in your title and in your content, that are aligned to the top driving keywords that are driving share of voice in the category, the better your score gets. I'm not terribly familiar with the intricacies of how the scores are calculated exactly. As a marketer, I try to stay away from some of the data science, but generally the idea is that we're trying to align you to the keywords that are driving the category. And that again is a reflection of the keywords that shoppers are using to find these products. And so that's where these inputs find themselves. Now, some of these inputs, if you have the buy box, you're either going to get 100, or if you lose the buy box, you get a 0. Image count. The more images you have, the better, but typically we recommend about 7, and so on. I mean, there are other ways that we measure this, but the long and short around content is aligning to keywords driving category.
Yeah. So, how often do you need to revisit your content to make sure that you're remaining aligned to keywords driving the category? And then
Yeah.
I'll take it one step further. Is there a way to flag as well?
Way to flag. What do you mean? I'm
Well,
sorry.
I would want to know if these went from all green to all red.
Yeah,
But I mean,
I
how
hope
often
that
do you
doesn't
see
happen.
people updating their content as a whole to stay on top of the changes in the algorithm or search patterns of the population?
Well, I speak to that a little bit. It depends. It really depends on the vertical or the industry that you find yourself in. I came from the toy industry. We were turning over 80% of our catalog every 6 months. And so we really didn't have a lot of time to align content updates to what was happening in the marketplace. You had to know right at the start of that. So that was happening about twice a year. If you think about how fast fashion turns over, I mean, it might be happening every month or every 2 or 3 months. But I think a good rule of thumb, I would say, is probably semi-annual. Some people would say quarterly, but semi-annual, you don't want to overburden your content team. Semi-annual, twice a year is probably going to be okay, but it does very much depend on the industry. Some industries are very fast moving. Some industries, soap is soap is soap. The challenge, though, is making sure that if soap is one of your top driving keywords, or if there's a generic term that's driving keywords, that you got to make sure it shows up in your titles and your content, because you'd be surprised how often we have to kind of remind these big brands, look, it's nice that you have this cool, nifty name, but you need to put in the generic search term somewhere in the title so that it aligns to how people shop.
No, I think I totally agree. I think is a key takeaway is being able to separate what you're doing and maybe paid search on your direct to consumer site versus what you're doing on Google and or how you're addressing paid media and what you're building into your marketing versus what you're actually putting on any of these marketplace pages as a whole for organic search relevance. Because you're right, it's not all about the flashing or the trending or the necessarily even the brand name in some cases. Specifically around what are the people on the platform actually searching for and how are they searching?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this next slide speaks to this a little bit. Royal Dansk, delicious butter cookies. But just a simple tweak, the simple tweak of changing it from a single butter cookie to butter cookies, the difference that makes. And it's really just about doing your research around your product pages and finding the keywords that not only have more search volume, but also have more search visibility in your category. Now, search volume is very important in understanding which words are generally winning on Amazon, but the search visibility is telling us how relevant these search terms are in your category. And that's the difference that we put into our sort of secret sauces. We're trying to take search volume and input it along with other calculations to get to search visibility, both organic search visibility and paid search visibility, to understand, is this keyword driving the category based on how many products in the category it lists, based on where those products land in the top seller pages, versus just the generic or the standard search volume that you can get across all of Amazon. And so just a quick content comparison, just making a little tweak in that title, can kind of make a big difference in that organic placement. And even just moving up a few spots, if you can move up from ninth to fourth or fifth or third, to just move up those few spots can mean a lot in sales. And I know the first question is, well, how much does it mean to move up from 9 to 5? The answer is everybody wants to know. There really is no set way to do it. But always making sure that you're aligned to how shoppers are searching, because they're not going to change the way they search because of how you structure or create your product titles. Other factors obviously will have some effect on the way shoppers search. The evolution of sustainability over the last couple of years, and how people have changed their vernacular around environmentally friendly products. I mean, that's stuff that does evolve from other sources, but you've got to be tracking how your shoppers are searching so that you can align to their psychology.
Yeah. So another question, if you can go back one slide, the one before this,
Yep.
would you say that these 8 are the key KPIs to look at, or the key things to look at for driving organic search ranking?
This is PDP optimization. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, just and Peter, as we send out this deck afterwards, I think this is a key one. I agree with the question that came in. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So one thing I love to talk about, and I've done this in prior webinars at other companies, but it's keyword seasonality. Understanding when keywords are going to pop, not just if they are have already popped, but if you know that a season is coming up and you're not optimized for that season. We're using Mother's Day gifts as a great example of this, but you've got to be ready for those seasons well in advance. We saw, I've done a variety of research on this, but we see that typically the words will pop before the sales go up. And so you've got to be ready and aligned weeks, maybe even months in advance. You know, Cyber 5, Black Friday, we're starting to see those creep into the front of November. It's not going to be long before we start to see that stuff happening prior to Halloween. Maybe somebody runs a Halloween Cyber 5 deal. I don't know, but your keyword seasonality is a big part of optimizing. Because if you're ready, if your keywords if your titles are aligned to the keywords that matter, if they're aligned to the seasonal winners that you've seen in prior years, then you're going to win some extra organic attention and sales in those weeks leading up to these events. And one thing that I like to warn, make sure that you know which keywords are seasonal and which keywords are evergreen. So seasonal keywords are the ones that go way up and then go way down when the season ends. But the keywords that are evergreen are ones that are always driving sustainable high search volume and search visibility. So as a category manager, as an e-commerce manager, as an SEO specialist, it's always good to have those lists kind of out in front of you to know which words do I want to optimize on all the time, which words do I want to optimize on at particular times of year. And sometimes we've seen best practices where people will switch out the keywords. They'll drop in stocking stuffer in mid-October, and then that keyword will disappear in place of Super Bowl Sunday as the keyword driver in their title. So you just got to think about, do I have a slot in my titles and in my content for seasonal terms that I can exchange every few months or so?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it flows directly in with the marketing calendar. It's one more thing to add in there as the content updates as a whole. Who's owning this? Do you know, like, typically? Because that's what you want to know, right? Like, if you're on the content team, you want to know, and what I'm thinking is the marketing calendar is, what are you looking at? What are you promoting? How can I jump on top of that and capitalize, especially as I'm looking at marketing, and we saw, a third of it is still paid search.
Yeah.
They're going to be driving traffic. We want to capitalize on as much of it as we can.
Yeah. The marketing calendar is a great place for this. Knowing when the retail events take place, when is Prime? Amazon keeps it a great secret. When is the special Target deal that happened in April? What are these other events taking place? And then of course you have your holidays and your seasonal shopping events. But typically it depends on the size of the team. But yeah, this is something that should be managed by the SEO specialist, or your copywriter. So those are the ones that would usually be on top of stuff like this, but they need to be plugged into this type of data and getting it on a regular basis from your e-commerce analyst, or from your e-commerce manager who has access to this type of reporting. And yes, the secret's out. Analytic Index has this type of reporting.
What learnings can you take away from the Amazon Marketplace data to help your other channels?
Ooh, good question. This is going to get a little weird, so bear with me, everybody. When I'm a law school dropout, but one of the things they talked about in my property law was Euclidean zoning, where you basically had a zone for industrial, commercial, residential, but then in the wider zone, it got more and more narrowed, where so by the time you reach the ends of the city, it was just residential. And then they designed it so that everything manufacturing was happening in the center of town, but you could keep that stuff away from where people were living or doing their office work. Amazon, I think about Amazon the way that I think about Euclidean zoning. Amazon is probably where you kind of start, because if you're optimized on Amazon, chances are that's going to translate to, in terms of images, in terms of product titles, that is probably going to translate 75, 80% of what the other retailers need. Now, there might be some nuances with Walmart, with Target, with Chewy. There might be some nuances that you have to tailor the product content for. But if you are aligning to Amazon's standard of excellence, you're probably going to meet the requirements across most of the retail landscape, with, of course, some exceptions. But that's how I think about it. Amazon should be, in the Euclidean zoning terms, it should be your zone A. That's the one that you probably want to align to first, at least in the US market.
Awesome. What if we don't have all those e-com roles at our company? Who should be keeping an eye on this?
Oh, man. I feel sorry for the e-commerce manager that has to do that. It's probably up to them. And it's something that if they're working with an agency, it's something that they would probably set in their calendar, again, that semi-annual cadence to align with your content team. If they're working with Salsify, or if they're working with an agency to kind of take care of this externally, that's maybe a quarterly meeting, maybe a semi-annual meeting, but it's a regular meeting on their calendar to make sure that, hey, are we aligning the agency to the data? And if the agency doesn't have this data, it's a great opportunity then to say, well, where can you get it? And of course, because of analytic indexes, lack of category walls across the landscape, agencies do love to work with us because they love to be able to work in a number of verticals, a number of industries for a wide variety of clients. I know we're running a little short on time, Aaron. I keep interrupting myself, but I think we've only got 1 or 2 slides left. Are there any other questions before I move on?
Yeah, we noticed some time delays in all of our ad and SEO strategy. Is it worth optimizing search terms for small windows? What's the seasonal window we should attempt to hit?
It depends. It depends on how important it is to your category. Um, how important is Amazon Prime to jewelry? How important is Cyber 5 to electronics? So it really does depend, how much does this particular event matter to my industry generally? And you can look and see, if you wanted to do a historical view of search volume, for example, you can look and see, did search volume bump up for these particular days in past years? And if they didn't, then maybe this event isn't worth pulling all the stops with my content team, pulling all-nighters to get the content right. Maybe it's not worth it to do it. Or maybe it's not worth it to focus on the entire portfolio. Maybe it's just 5 products that you want to do a test and learn on. So it really does depend on the industry, does depend on the event. But yeah, it really does vary. But I would say that it doesn't necessarily have to be just around the event. It could also be, hey, how targeted do I want to get with my content optimization with my portfolio for these seasonal keywords? There might only be a few products that would fit in a stocking. So maybe only a few should get the stocking stuffer keyword. All right. So, and this kind of speaks to this last slide speaks to that. It's the constant maintenance. It's not necessarily how frequent you meet, just to make sure that it's frequent enough to capture those big events. And you might have one big event a quarter, you might have one big event a half year or semi-annually. And it is up to you to kind of determine what is the right cadence for me. What is my bandwidth or the bandwidth of my team? If we are overworked as it is because our catalog is huge, we've got 10,000 products every 6 months we got to roll out because we're Mattel, then maybe it's just a one-time, we just have to find the keywords once every 6 months and just run with it. Or if you're in a more dynamic space and you've got a large team, are we looking at this on a monthly basis? Are we tracking to the right colors that are trending in fashion? Are we tracking to the right keywords that our competitors are winning on? And so determining what that cadence is really up to you, but having a tool that tracks it is what you need. And ours tracks this data. We look at it from that bestseller perspective or that share voice perspective. We look at it at a daily level, but we roll those up into weeks, months, and quarters. And so it can align to somebody's cadence as needed.
Awesome.
Yeah, we made it. We did it.